the year 2167, Earth was no longer the center of its own fate. After a long and brutal war with the alien race known as the Zalari, humanity was left broken and weak. The war had ended with a treaty, but it was a treaty written in fear, not trust. One of the conditions was strange, shocking, and humiliating. The Zalari demanded a marriage. One human must marry a Zalari royal. Many believed it was a cruel joke. Some thought it was a test. But orders came quickly from the United Earth Council. A human was to be chosen, and the wedding would be broadcast to both worlds. It would be a symbol of peace, or maybe a warning. Captain Darren Cole had never wanted to be a symbol. He was a war hero, a survivor of the Battle of Europa. He had lost friends, limbs, and faith in leaders who played games with lives. When he was chosen for the honor, he almost laughed, but there was no way out. He was taken to the space station orbiting Zalari Prime. Everything was clean, bright, and silent. The aliens didn't speak much. They only watched. He was given new clothes, new rules, and a warning. Don't speak unless spoken to. Darren didn't care. He was just waiting to play the puppet, smile for the camera, and get it over with. Then he saw her, Princess Lyra of the Zalari, tall, silver-skinned, and glowing slightly with inner energy. Her eyes were deep red, like molten fire, but her face was calm, unreadable. She didn't look like someone about to marry a human. She looked like someone ready for war. The wedding was silent, no music, no family, just officials and guards. Darren stood beside her, his heart cold. She turned to him slowly, then leaned in, and whispered something that made his blood freeze. "This is not a marriage, human," she said, voice soft and sharp. "It's a trap. Run." Darren blinked, stunned. Had she really said that? He looked around. The guards were still. The officials emotionless, no one reacted. He looked at her again. She stared ahead, as if nothing had happened. The ceremony continued. Vows were exchanged in two languages, though neither bride nor groom meant them. The final moment came. They were now bonded by treaty, by law. Darren was now the husband of a warrior princess who might want him dead. Later, in the private chamber prepared for them, Darren sat alone. He tried to think clearly, but the whisper echoed in his mind. Trap, trap, trap. The walls looked normal, but something in the air felt wrong. It was too quiet, too perfect. He felt like a mouse in a lab, being watched, studied, tested. Why would she warn him? Was she part of the trap, or was she trapped too? Suddenly the lights dimmed, and Lyra entered. She walked slowly, her movements like water. She sat across from him, and for a long time said nothing. Then she looked up, her red eyes burning. "You were not supposed to survive the war," she said softly. "But now, we are both prisoners." Darren didn't answer, he just stared. Because he realized something. The war had never truly ended. It had only changed form, and this was just the beginning. Captain Darren Cole woke up in silence. There was no alarm, no sunlight, no voice, only a faint hum, like the deep breathing of the palace itself. He was no longer on Earth, and this was not a dream. His new home was beautiful, but it felt wrong. The walls shimmered with soft blue lights, the bed was too soft, and the ceiling changed colors slowly, like a calm ocean. There were no guards in sight, but he knew they were watching. He had no freedom, only comfort. It was a prison wrapped in silk. The room had everything. Food appeared when he touched the wall. Clothes changed shape to fit his body. Even the air was filtered with calming scents. But Darren didn't feel calm. He felt like a mouse in a glass box, being watched from above. Every few hours, a soft tone would ring and a screen would light up. It showed news from Earth and Zalari space. Selected and controlled, there were no real updates, only words like peace, unity, and celebration. It was fake, all of it. He didn't trust anything anymore, not after what Lyra whispered at the wedding. She hadn't spoken to him since. They shared the palace, but not their lives. She had her own chambers, her own guards, her own secrets. When they passed in the hallways, she nodded politely, like nothing had ever happened. But Darren saw it in her eyes. She was hiding something. One evening, Darren wandered into the garden. It wasn't made of real plants, just light, holograms, and moving water. He sat under a glowing tree and looked at the stars above, or at least, he thought they were stars. They could have been pixels on a fake sky. He was losing his grip. That's when he found it. A small stone placed on the bench beside him. It was smooth, round, and glowing with a faint symbol. He turned it over and saw a word written in Zalari script, but he had studied the basics during the war. The word meant truth, sure. He looked around. No one in sight. He took the stone back to his room, placed it on the desk, and tapped it. It activated, casting a small hologram, a map of the palace with red lines moving through it. There was a blinking dot near his room and a line leading toward a closed section labeled Chamber 17. He followed it quietly, late at night. The guards didn't stop him. Perhaps they thought he was harmless. When he reached Chamber 17, the door was sealed, but when he touched it, the stone glowed and the door slid open. Inside, there were no lights, only machines, screens showing videos, pictures, memories from the war. But something was wrong. The humans in the videos weren't soldiers. They were scientists. They were experimenting on Zalari prisoners, doing things he had never been told. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and someone entered the room. It was Lyra. She looked at the screens, then at him, and said quietly, "Now you see it." Darren felt cold. He had fought a war he thought was about survival. But what if it was about power? About control? Lyra stepped closer, her voice calm but sharp. "They lied to you, Darren," she said. "This marriage, this palace, even the peace, it's all a game," Darren asked. "Then what's the real plan?" Lyra looked at the glowing screens, then back at him. "First," she said, "you need to know who your real enemies are." Darren Cole couldn't sleep that night. The lights in the palace dimmed to signal rest, but his mind was far from quiet. The hologram of Lyra haunted him. Her voice, her warning, her eyes. He had seen her calm and powerful, but in the message, she had looked scared, almost human. What was this place really? The next morning, he tested the limits of his freedom. He walked past his usual route, through new halls lined with art that pulsed with light. The palace was beautiful, yes, but it was a maze. Smooth doors, curved corridors, and no way to tell what was real. Every hallway looked clean, perfect, and false. Then he saw it. A door unlike the others. No lights, no guards, and no welcome. It was covered in thick cables, strange Zalari symbols, and a warning sign glowing red. Darren had seen signs like that before. During the war, near weapons labs and places humans were told never to enter. A voice behind him broke the silence. "You shouldn't be here." He turned quickly, hand reaching for a weapon he no longer carried, but it was Lyra standing in the shadows, dressed not in royal robes but in simple battle gear. Her hair was tied back, her face serious, her voice low. "This room is off limits for a reason," she said. Darren didn't move. He looked at the door again, then back at her. "You said I needed to know the truth," he said. "I'm ready." Lyra hesitated, then placed her hand on the wall. A scanner appeared, glowing red, then green. The door hissed open slowly, revealing a chamber filled with cold air and whispering machines. They stepped inside. The walls were covered in old data screens and holographic maps. A massive table in the center showed Earth, not a picture, but a full 3D model, alive with movement. Darren stepped closer and saw blinking dots. Military bases, satellites, population centers. Every secret Earth thought it had was here, stored stud. And mapped by the Zalari. "What is this place?" Darren asked, voice tight. Lyra didn't answer right away. She walked to the back wall where a small terminal lit up. "This was my brother's work," she said quietly. "He believed war was the only way to protect our people." She touched the screen, and a video started playing. It showed human prisoners, scientists, soldiers, politicians, being questioned, tested, broken. Darren turned away, his stomach twisting. "These videos were never shared," Lyra said. "Your leaders made sure of that." Darren clenched his fists. He had fought for Earth, risked his life for honor, but the truth was messier than he ever imagined. "We both were lied to," he whispered. Lyra nodded. "This marriage was meant to be a distraction," she said, "while they prepare for something worse, something final." He looked at her. "An invasion?" She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. Darren stared at the glowing map, thinking of Earth, his family, his people. He couldn't trust his leaders, and he couldn't trust hers either. But maybe, just maybe, he could trust her. Lyra stepped beside him, close enough to hear her breath. "If we work together," she said, "we might stop what's coming." He nodded slowly. "I didn't come here to be a husband," he said. "I came here to survive." Her eyes glowed slightly in the dark. "Then let's start surviving." Darren Cole was never trained for this. War, yes. Survival, yes. But not this. Not sharing secret rooms with an alien bride who might be the only person keeping him alive. He had trusted guns, orders, and his instincts, but now he had to trust Lyra, and that was harder than facing a battlefield. For the next few days, they met in the hidden chamber. She showed him more. Files, stolen transmissions, and data from both sides. He listened, asked questions, and slowly, the pieces started to fit. Earth wasn't planning peace. Neither were the Zalari. This marriage was a show, a distraction for both worlds. But under the surface, weapons were being moved, armies positioned, codes exchanged. Something big was coming, and Darren knew he was in the middle of it. Still, something strange was happening. Not outside, but inside him. Every time Lyra spoke, he watched her. Not with fear, but with curiosity. There was fire in her eyes, but pain too. She looked strong, but alone. One evening, during another secret meeting, the palace shook. Just a tremor, small but sharp. The lights flickered and the screens glitched. Lyra grabbed Darren's arm and pulled him back against the wall. "Stay still," she whispered. "They're searching for movement in unauthorized sectors." Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Alien voices spoke in a language Darren didn't know, fast and angry. He held his breath, heart pounding. Lyra pressed her palm against a wall panel, and part of it slid open, revealing a crawl space. "In here," she said. They climbed in side by side as the secret door sealed shut. The space was tight and dark, only a thin strip of light between them. Darren could hear her breathing, calm but sharp. She wasn't afraid. She was used to this. It made him wonder how long she had been fighting her own people. They waited in silence. Then he spoke, quietly. "How do you live like this?" She turned slightly. "You get used to being hunted," she said. "When you learn the truth, there's no going back." He nodded slowly. "I was always told the Zalari were monsters," he said, "that they felt nothing." She gave a faint, bitter smile. "Some of us feel too much. We just hide it better." The silence stretched again. Then he said something without thinking. "You don't seem like a monster." She looked at him, eyes glowing softly in the dark. "And you don't seem like a fool." Something shifted between them. Not love, not yet, but understanding. Like two soldiers sharing the same trench, two people trapped by their own empires. The crawlspace door opened with a hiss. The patrol had moved on. They stepped back into the secret room, the light slowly returning to normal, but the air between them had changed. Later, Darren sat at his desk in his private room, staring at the ceiling. He thought about her. The way she moved, spoke, fought, and hid her pain. He had never expected to respect an alien. Now, he didn't just respect her, he trusted her. That trust was dangerous. It was the kind of spark that started revolutions. Somewhere deep in the palace, Lyra sat alone. She held a small human trinket, a metal coin Darren had dropped earlier. She closed her fingers around it and whispered to herself, this wasn't supposed to happen. The palace was too quiet. After the near discovery during their last meeting, Darren and Lyra kept their distance during the day, but the silence between them only made the connection stronger. They didn't speak much in public, but their eyes met often. Across the hall, during meals, in empty corridors, each glance carried meaning now, unspoken, dangerous, real. Darren found himself thinking about her when he didn't want to, not just as an ally, but as a person. As someone who, beneath the cold look and glowing eyes, was just as lost as him. He remembered the sound of her voice in the crawlspace, the way she had grabbed his arm, not with force, but instinct, and how she had whispered like she had no one else to speak to. One evening, he wandered into the fake garden again. This time, she was already there, standing beneath the glowing tree, looking up at the stars, or whatever the projection wanted them to believe were stars. She didn't turn when he approached. "You come here often?" he asked, half joking. She smiled just slightly. "It's the only place that doesn't feel like a lie," she said, "even if it is one." He stood beside her, silent for a moment. "You ever see Earth?" he asked. She nodded. "From a distance, through a warship window. It looked blue." He laughed softly. "That's about right." Lyra turned to him, curious. "Why do humans laugh?" she asked. "When things are sad or confusing, you still laugh." He looked at her and shrugged. "Because if we don't, we break," he said. "It's like pressure. It has to go somewhere." She seemed to think about that for a long time. Then slowly, she smiled again. This time more naturally. It's strange, she said. When you laugh, you look like someone who isn't dangerous. Darren chuckled. And when you smile, you look like someone who isn't planning a galactic coup. The air between them grew warmer. I sat by the water projection, side by side, not touching, but not far either. Darren reached into his pocket and pulled out a small item, a memory chip. It has music, he said. Old Earth songs, real stuff, not government anthems. She took it carefully, holding it like it might break. I've never heard human music, she whispered. You should, he said. It tells the truth, even when people don't. Later that night, alarms echoed through the palace. Darren was pulled from his room by guards. They said someone had broken a code seal. He played dumb, asked questions, acted surprised, but in his mind he was already planning an escape. He was taken to a questioning room, not a prison, but close. They scanned his thoughts with light pulses, searching for guilt. He kept his mind focused on childhood memories. Laughter, Earth, home. Hours passed, but they found nothing. He was released just before sunrise. As he returned to his room, he found a message hidden in the door panel. A single line in Zalari script written by Lyra. They are testing the walls. We must move soon. Inside his room, the coin he had once lost was resting on the table, clean, polished, and placed gently on a cloth. She had returned it, she remembered. Darren picked it up, closed his hand around it, and let out a long breath. Something had changed. This wasn't just an alliance anymore. This was something dangerous, something human. The next morning, Darren woke to unexpected news. A visitor had arrived from Earth, someone high-ranking, someone familiar, Commander Elias Trent, a political officer who once briefed Darren during wartime. Trent was known for his charm, his perfect smile, and the way he always said just enough without revealing anything real. Darren met him in the palace's reception hall. Trent stepped forward with open arms and a too-wide grin. Ambassador Cole, he said, you're looking well. Darren didn't smile. Didn't know Earth still remembered me, he replied. Trent laughed, but his eyes didn't. We remember everyone we send into the lion's mouth. Behind Trent stood two more humans, security detail or spies. Darren couldn't tell. Their faces were cold, their uniforms plain. They said nothing, only watched. For the next few hours, Trent asked questions, friendly at first, about food, health, the marriage, then more pointed, about Lyra, her schedule, her habits, her thoughts. Darren answered carefully, feeling every word weighed and measured. That night, Darren met Lyra in the garden again. He told her about Trent, and her face darkened. He shouldn't be here, she said, not unless something is about to happen. She looked toward the stars above. They're moving the pieces, she whispered. And we're standing in the middle. Darren nodded. He's not here to check on peace, he said. He's here to find out what we know. They decided to wait and watch, but the very next day, everything changed. Darren was called to the medical wing for a routine check. He was scanned, questioned, and then injected with a so-called nutrient booster. But as soon as he left the lab, his body felt different. His thoughts were heavier, slower, like walking through fog. He barely made it back to his room before collapsing. Lyra found him hours later, his skin pale, his eyes unfocused. She scanned, Ned him with her own equipment and cursed softly. They tagged you, she said. A neural tracker, deep layer. She pulled out a device and pressed it to his temple. A spark of pain hit Darren's skull as she neutralized the signal. The fog lifted slowly, but the damage was done. Earth was watching him now, recording his thoughts, reading his movements. He sat up slowly, his voice rough. They don't trust me, he said. They never did. Lyra didn't speak for a moment. Then she said something he wasn't ready to hear. They're preparing to strike. Earth thinks the Zalari are planning a full invasion. They want to hit first, using the marriage as the perfect cover. Darren's breath caught. So they sent me here not as a peace offering, he said, but as bait. Lyra nodded. And me as a hostage, she said. Neither of us were meant to walk away from this. He stood, fists clenched. We can't let them go through with it. She looked at him. Then we need to act before they do. Later that night, Darren accessed his old military codes. Lyra hacked into the Zalari communication grid. They pulled data, tracked movements, confirmed the worst. Both sides were readying for war. Quietly, carefully, with smiles on their faces, all the talk of peace was just a mask, and time was running out. As they worked side by side, Lyra touched his arm. "You still trust me?" she asked. He didn't hesitate. "With my life," he said. That was the moment the betrayal ended and the real alliance began. The stars outside the palace windows looked calm, but inside, everything was speeding toward chaos. Darren and Lyra no longer had the luxury of waiting. Their time had run out. Earth and the Zalari Empire were preparing for war, and both sides had already decided to erase the two of them when the moment came. They needed a way out, not just to survive, but to stop what was coming. And for that, they needed something dangerous. They needed a ship. Lyra led him deep beneath the palace, into levels no one talked about. "Few remember these tunnels," she said. "They were used before the royal AI took control." The air was cold, metal walls covered in rust and shadow. It felt like walking through history no one wanted to remember. They reached an old hangar sealed by a heavy door. Lyra placed her hand on the lock, but it didn't respond. She looked at Darren. "It needs two prints," she said. "Zalari and human." He stepped forward without a word, placing his palm beside hers. A click echoed through the tunnel, and the door hissed open. Inside was a ship, sleek, black, and half covered in dust. It wasn't just fast, it was invisible to both Earth and Zalari sensors. A prototype from an abandoned joint research project. They weren't supposed to know it existed, no one was. Darren walked around it slowly. "This could get us to the neutral moon," he said. "Sarn Station," Lyra added, "where we can show the galaxy what's really going on." For days they worked in secret. Lyra reactivated the ship's systems, bypassing corrupted codes and old lockdowns. Darren gathered supplies, rebuilt the navigation panel, and restored the stealth field. The ship came alive slowly, like a sleeping predator opening its eyes, but tension grew with every passing hour. Surveillance increased, guards started asking more questions. Trent, the Earth envoy, requested another meeting. Darren refused, saying he needed rest, but he knew it was only a matter of time before Trent made his move. One evening, while rerouting a power core, Lyra stopped and stared at a file buried deep in the ship's memory. It was an old message from her father, the Zalari Emperor. She opened it, and his voice echoed through the chamber, cold and sharp. "You were never meant to return from this mission, my daughter," he said. "Your role was to stand still while history moved without you." Lyra's face hardened. Darren watched her, saying nothing. She deleted the file without a word. "That's the last time I follow someone else's script," she said quietly. The day of the escape arrived. They wore official robes, smiling for the palace staff, pretending everything was normal. But beneath the robes, they carried weapons, codes, and the truth. Lyra had planted a false communication to draw the security team away. Darren disabled 2 cameras and jammed the main sensor grid. Everything went smoothly until it didn't. As they reached the hangar, the alarm blared. Red lights flashed across the walls. "We've been found," Darren said. Lyra didn't hesitate. "Then we fly." They ran toward the ship as guards flooded the tunnel behind them. Bolts of energy lit the corridor, blasting into walls and sending sparks flying. Darren returned fire, covering Lyra as she activated the launch sequence. They jumped into the cockpit, doors sealing shut just as explosions rocked the floor. The ship lifted, silent and fast, vanishing into space as palace defenses tried, and failed, to lock on. Inside, breathing heavy, Darren looked at Lyra. "We made it." She nodded, eyes forward. "For now," she said. "But this is only the beginning." The stars flew past in streaks of light. The stolen ship tore through space, silent and unseen. Darren and Lyra sat in the cockpit, both breathing hard, hearts still racing. Behind them, the palace burned in chaos, alarms screaming across the galaxy. Ahead of them was the unknown. No messages came through, no tracking signals. The stealth field was holding, hiding them from Earth's satellites and Zalari patrols, but they knew it wouldn't last. The ship was fast, but not invincible, and someone, on both sides, was going to come after them. Lyra adjusted the controls, setting a course toward Sarn Station. It was a neutral moon, a trade hub filled with spies, smugglers, and people who asked no questions. If they could reach it, they might have a chance to broadcast the truth about the fake peace, the planned war, and the betrayal by both governments. But it was still 2 days away, and space was not empty. Halfway through their journey, warning lights flashed red. Ship detected, Darren said, scanning the readings. Lyra narrowed her eyes. It's Zalari tech, a hunter drone. The drone was fast, faster than expected. It locked onto them, chasing them through an asteroid belt. Darren flew low, weaving between spinning rocks. The ship shook violently, alarms screaming in the cockpit. Lyra rerouted power to the engines, voice calm but sharp. Left, she said. Now up. Boost. A huge asteroid spun toward them, blocking their path. Darren didn't flinch. He twisted the ship sideways, scraping against the stone with a shower of sparks. The drone clipped a smaller rock and exploded behind them, flames swallowed by vacuum. They were safe. For now. Later, in the quiet of the ship's dark corridor, Darren sat alone. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from everything building inside him. Memories of war, betrayal, the moment Lyra pulled him to safety. Again, and again, she found him there, sitting on the cold metal floor. She sat beside him without speaking. For a long moment, they just breathed together. Finally, Darren looked at her. You didn't have to come with me, he said. You could have turned me in and stayed safe. Lyra didn't look away. I've been safe my whole life, she said, and it never meant anything. He looked at her, really looked, not as an alien, not as a warrior, but as someone who had risked everything, just like him. There's something I need to ask, he said slowly. Back on the first day, when you warned me at the wedding. Why did you say it? Lyra's voice was soft now. Because I saw your face, she said, and it was the only honest thing in the whole room. Silence filled the space between them. Then she reached out slowly, carefully, and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, glowing faintly. She didn't pull away, and neither did he. Their heads leaned close, and for the first time their lips touched. It wasn't rushed or wild. It was quiet, steady, two people finding something real in the middle of lies. When they pulled apart, Darren whispered, "What now?" Lyra looked at him with soft eyes. Now we finish what we started, she said, together. Outside, the stars stretched ahead like a silver road. Sarn Station waited on the edge of the next system. But so did the truth, and enemies who would kill to keep it buried. And still, they flew forward. Sarn Station floated in the dark like a rusted jewel. Built into the shell of a hollow moon, it was a place where law came second and secrets came first. Traitors, smugglers, and exiles called it home. No flags, no oaths, just survival. Darren and Lyra arrived in silence, cloaked ships slipping past patrols unnoticed. They wore cloaks, not robes, faces hidden. They walked shoulder to shoulder down steel corridors filled with alien voices and shifting lights. Every step felt heavier. They were carrying data drives filled with stolen files, recordings, messages, truth. If they shared it with the right people, the war could be stopped. But if they were caught, they'd vanish without a trace. No trial, no last words. They made contact with someone Lyra once trusted, a former Zalari technician named Rovan. He now ran a small signal post deep inside Sarn's lower levels. Rovan didn't ask questions, but his face twisted when he saw the files. "This is fire," he whispered. "Dangerous to hold, deadly to release." "Then we better move fast," Darren said. "We need this seen, by everyone." Rovan connected the drives, sending the data across a dozen hidden channels, to rebel groups, pirate networks, truth circles, and one secret line to Earth's underground press. It was done. The truth was now out in the wild. It could not be pulled back. And just in time, hours later, the first shots were fired. Earth accused the Zalari of building weapons on neutral ground. Zalari accused Earth of spying and assassination. Within minutes, skirmishes broke out on the edge of known space. Ships were destroyed, lives lost, borders closed. The war had begun. Not with sirens, but with silence. Cold, precise, and deadly. In the control room, Lyra stared at the feed as explosions lit up the outer zones. "This is what they wanted all along," she said. "Not peace, not balance, just war with clean." Her headlines. Darren watched too, fists clenched. "All those lives," he said, "for nothing but power." They had done what they could, but exposed the truth, released the proof. Now, they had to survive the backlash. Their names were already marked on both sides. Traitors, enemies, ghosts, wanted posters flashed across stations, faces distorted by lies. They couldn't go back. Not to Earth, not to Zalari space, not yet. But something strange started happening. Messages came in, hidden, short, full of code, from soldiers, diplomats, civilians on both sides. People who had seen the files, believed the evidence, and wanted change. A quiet resistance was forming, not under flags, but under truth. It wasn't big, not yet, but it was growing. Lyra looked at Darren, eyes fierce. You feel it? He nodded. Yeah, he said. The war just started. But so did something else. They made a plan to strike next, not with weapons, but with words, to reach leaders who still had hearts, to spark revolt where there was silence. Outside, warships passed above Sarn Station, heading to battle. Inside, two fugitives prepared to light another match. Because sometimes, the loudest weapons aren't guns. They're truths that refuse to stay buried, and they weren't done speaking yet. The sky above Earth's outer defense ring was burning. War had arrived in full. Zalari ships clashed with human fleets in cold silence. Beams of light tearing through steel. Explosions bloomed in space like deadly flowers. But deep inside Sarn Station, two fugitives prepared for their final move. Darren Cole and Princess Lyra had already changed the game once. Now they were going to end it. They couldn't stop every ship, but they could stop the lie. And sometimes, one truth, spoken loud enough, could shatter everything. They hijacked an ancient relay station buried in the rocks beneath Sarn, a forgotten broadcast tower built during the first expansion wars. It was slow, unstable, and nearly falling apart, but it reached everywhere. Both Earth and Zalari command lines were still patched into its code. Darren stood before the console, staring at the blinking green light. If we do this, he said, they'll know exactly where we are. Lyra stepped beside him, placing the final encryption key into the terminal. They already do, she said, but this time, we speak first. They activated the broadcast, and a ripple of light spread across systems. Screens lit up across battleships, stations, control rooms, even underground networks. The image showed Darren and Lyra standing side by side. Darren spoke first. If you're watching this, you've already heard the lies, he said. You've been told that we are enemies, that this war is about safety, pride, justice, Lyra continued. But the truth is simpler. This war was planned. Not by the people, not by soldiers like you, but by leaders who fear peace more than death. They showed files, secret messages, orders to eliminate peace envoys, recordings of the treaty being twisted. They showed the AI programs controlling Zalari decisions and the human politicians who fed them lies. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't clean, but it was real. You can keep fighting, Darren said. You can keep obeying, hoping it will all make sense. Or you can stop, think, and choose your own side. Lyra looked into the camera, eyes glowing softly. We chose each other, across species, across war, across everything they built to divide us. And we won't stop speaking. The signal cut, and silence followed. For a moment they waited. Then the alarm screamed. A ship was coming, fast, powerful, marked with both Earth and Zalari tech. They've joined forces, Darren said bitterly. No, Lyra whispered. That's not an attack vessel. That's a diplomatic escort. Minutes later, a message came through. It was from the new commander of the human fleet. Not Trent, but someone younger. A woman who had seen the broadcast and chosen to stand down. Zalari ships nearby had done the same. Their message was short, but powerful. We hear you, it said. Come speak. Not as enemies, not as pawns, but as the first of something new. Lyra looked at Darren, shocked. He gave a small smile. Looks like we started something bigger than war. The diplomatic ship landed on Sarn's dusty landing pad, and for the first time in history, a human and a Zalari stepped forward, not as weapons, but as witnesses. Together, they faced the leaders who still dared to listen. The final scene faded with Darren and Lyra walking into the future. No flags behind them, no armies at their backs, just truth, and the bond that had started in silence, grown in danger, and now burned brighter than any war. They were never meant to love, never meant to survive, but together, they became something impossible. A bridge between worlds, and bridges, once built, do not fall easily.